I can count on one hand the number of violent attacks coming from leftists in this manner.
Now, I don't know how many fingers this dude has on his hand. I'm guessing he should have somewhere around 30 or 40 fingers on that hand. I'm going to give at least 6 just to make the point that we're off of his hand easy.
An Antifa member shot dead, a Trump supporter.
So the weaponization of government continues. Now, up until now, I've been covering in this series nothing but the FBI, the FBI informants, the FBI whistleblowers, along, I would love to cover the 11 who are either missing or in jail or in court with gag orders, but obviously the assault from the federal government on those individuals was too much to bear at the moment. But getting away from the trials for a moment, there's something else going on. Now, you might have seen or heard on other platforms that DHS has been funding these NGO, non-government organizations, to do their dirty work in more ways than just paying illegal immigrants to be here and things of that nature. They actually are funding and giving out grants, of which they've given out 80 grants up until now. The median of the grants was around $440,000. So we're looking at about 30 million, around there, that they've given out to these non-government organizations to basically turn people against each other and identify Christians, average conservatives, anything Republican, really, anything associated with the right, into an extremist organization. And what these organizations do is they get these grants and then they run these studies and they do these lectures, and the lectures are all involved with turning people against each other and identifying extremists as normal, everyday people. And the people who do this, the people that are a part of these NGOs, we're going to get into one of them, Dr. Mike Lodenthal. But when we get into him, you'll see, and the thing I want to paint out first, as you know, I always have a little bit of a different twist on these stories. And what I hear with this, aside from the obvious government overreach of authority, which we can address with none other than Article V, I want to point out the mass formation here and why, like how these people do what they do and why they don't think it's wrong. Now, they give us these gems because they believe, because they've been programmed so long ago, all right, that this is inundated with them now. And they don't have to be programmed long ago. It could be fresh. As once demoralization is complete, it's a wrap. They're in. There's nothing that's going to change their mind. And I want to give you a piece to start off to touch on this, because that's going to be the theme as I go through these videos. I want to give you a quick reminder from Yuri Bezmenov. But before I do that, I want to explain what they're doing as far as extremists. So when I say they're making Christians and they're making, anyone on the right extremists, here's what I mean. So this was put out by DARPA. This was back 2 years ago or so when Biden first came in. They had the Defense Department basically looking for anyone in the military, and they were purging the military of anybody who was not a believer in their psycho philosophy. And to do that, they created the term Patriot extremism. So if you don't see the Marxist picture in this alone, just from the name, I don't know what can show you, but let's get into the definition, because this doesn't even just cover right, and they consider this alt-right. All right, the core belief of someone who's engaged in patriot extremism is that this ideology holds that the U.S. government has become corrupt, has overstepped its constitutional boundaries, or is no longer capable of protecting the people against foreign threats. That's literally left and right. It's not Marxist, because Marxists are beholden to government. They're beholden to state. But as far as regular classic liberals, yeah, they all think the government's become corrupt too. Anyone with half a brain knows that the government has become corrupt and that they've overstepped their constitutional boundaries, like they do in this example I'm about to give, and that they're no longer capable of protecting people against foreign threats. Yeah, there's articles coming out that we would run out of bullets if we took on a major war. These are common beliefs. This is mainstream. This is not extreme. They literally are identifying more than half the country, like 3/4 of the country, with this extremist piece. And now, One of the programs out of Dayton University who took the grant money from the DHS went ahead and put together this pyramid of far-right radicalization. Now, you may have seen this floating around in the last few days. The bottom rung is like as it goes up the levels, it gets less people but more extreme. So you've got Fox News. Fox News. You think that that's broad and sweeping? Well, hell yeah, it is. But not as sweeping as the entire Republican Party. I mean, the Republican symbol, the elephant with the stars, is a part of the extremist groups. They believe this stuff, folks, and the DHS is paying them to put this garbage together. All right, it's wild, and the DHS just comes out and goes, "No, we didn't." It's like, yes, you did. Yes, you did. This is the type of thinking, all right, that goes into what they're trying to accomplish with these grants and the types of organizations that are getting this grant money. And I wanted to touch upon the Yuri Bezmenov piece because I want you to think as we get into Mike Lodenthal and the seminar that they did. I want you to be thinking in terms of this as you're sitting there laughing at what this guy's saying and wondering, how could he not know? This is why. This is how he wouldn't know.
Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black. You still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible.
It is complete and it is irreversible. That's what these people, they don't know that this is their deal. And everyone today seems to think everyone else is mass formated, but these folks are the ones, all right? If you ever were confused as to who it might be, it's always the ones who believe in Marxism. This happens to every single nation that falls to Marxism. Now, they've been trying this between the Soviets and the CCP for some 70 years now. They have succeeded in seriously making imbeciles out of many in our culture and our society. But nonetheless, they are easily identifiable. This, in case you think it's all crazy and can't be true, this is from, and I have a link to this in the Rumble description, threats and identification and mitigation trainings. They have trainings that DHS holds, okay, where you can volunteer, go in and learn how to turn on your neighbors and learn how to do all this crazy stuff. Now, I want to get into Mike Lodenthal, Dr. Mike Lodenthal, who has doctorates in all kinds of bizarre stuff. He's the head of all kinds of Marxist university programs and things like that. He is a research fellow over at the University of Cincinnati. Again, he's involved in all kinds of crazy do Marxist stuff. But he believes what he's saying, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. He's not some guy saying, I'm trying to bring evil to the world. This man thinks that what he's doing is noble. He thinks that what he's doing is intellectual. He's been raised his whole life this way. If you tell him otherwise, he will say, what degrees do you have? This is the kind of guy that we're dealing with here. What he does in his organization, in the seminar I'm about to show you, is that his organization tries to actively but subversively deplatform any conservatives, really. If you listen to the whole seminar, and I have the link to that in the Rumble description as well, so nobody's accusing me of taking it out of context. If you listen to the entire seminar, you'll see the way they conflate and equate like a militant man with a gun and army gear with an innocent mom who's just trying to say, stay away from my kids. They conflate these things together, and they come to these terms of what an extremist is, and in their minds, they believe everybody on the right is an extremist. So therefore, anyone in society who is mass formated like these guys are will then sell out and actively look for and dox and harass and try to deplatform anybody who doesn't think like them, all the while calling the other people fascists. It's insanity. It's insanity. So let's listen to the good doctor here. Tell us about his deplatforming.
Deplatforming is denying far-right fascist folk any sort of public sphere access. Denying them the ability to speak, because the argument is that hate speech is more than speech. It's materiality, it's organizing, it's mobilization. It's not an exchange of ideas in the marketplace and the best one wins. It's something else. It's the strategic deployment of organizational energy and power. And so to deny people that, to shut down their websites, to close their meetings, to physically prevent them from assembling in public. This is the belief.
So right there, right, he's trying to subvert the Constitution through speech, right? Because he's saying, well, we've defined hate speech, like we don't know who we is, right? But they've defined hate speech as being separate from regular speech. Only it's not love speech. Love speech is protected, but not hate speech. It's a different thing. This guy's never had a civics class in his life, and the only one he might have had probably taught him all this garbage that he's spewing out right now. But then on top of that, he also wants to infringe on your ability to assemble, to peacefully assemble. Nowhere in this does he notice that he's literally speaking anti-American, concepts right now, and is being fun and is using this. This is the seminar that they submitted with their application to get a grant from the Department of Homeland Security. Just saying.
And this is how it occurs, right? This is the frequent way it occurs. There's a lot of ways it occurs, but frequently people are kind of outed on the internet. Typically, Twitter is the medium. If you're following the news, you'll learn that a couple of days ago, Twitter basically outlawed this, which will have severe consequences for people like us. Twitter basically passed a policy which says your account can be shut down if you post identifying information about people, which on the surface sounds okay, but is actually, just take my word for it, not being deployed well.
So what he's saying here is basic. So we've already tried to knock down freedom of speech. He's already trying to block people's freedom to assemble. Now, and again, it's illegal on any front, but it's particularly illegal when it's something that's when it's being funded by a government grant, which directly puts the government involved in trying to subvert someone's freedoms. Now, he talks about Twitter, and to be fair, this was around 2021, all right? So in like late 2021 that this was done, so I don't believe it was Elon Musk yet, but Twitter put out a no doxing policy, basically, that you can't just out people and put their personal information out into the sphere with the intention of others to attack. And he's like, that really hurt us. That really hurt us. It's being mismanaged. He would like to see it managed where they're allowed to do that, because it'll help them to subvert the Constitution and infringe on people's rights from the private sector. It's absolutely maddening that this man thinks this way. Now, that's not all they do. They also try to manufacture infighting like this.
Push people towards frustration and contempt. We manufacture, I don't think it's any secret to say we manufacture a lot of infighting. That's real effective. And that's much more effective to paralyze organizations than exposing Johnny. Because when Johnny leaves, he'll be filled by someone else.
Now, who's Johnny, you might be asking yourself? Well, Johnny is someone in an example that they gave earlier who they said, here's Johnny. Johnny is a Nazi. And they basically identify Johnny as an extremist. In this case, they say that he's a Jew-hating Nazi. But it could be any extremist. And by their definition, literally could be anyone. So it doesn't have to be a Nazi. It could be someone who watches Fox News or listens to Turning Point or PragerU. This is why I'm bringing that up earlier, because what their definition in their examples, they try to talk about Nazis, but in the end, it's any extremist. And they've made it clear that everyone who disagrees with their Marxist vision of the world is an extremist. So they take Johnny and they say, well, Johnny's got a career, Johnny's doing this, Johnny's doing that. Well, we're going to go to Johnny's boss at work. We're going to go to Johnny's family. We're going to go to Johnny's friends. We're going to talk crap about Johnny every single place we can go until Johnny gets fired, has no friends, and his family hates him. This is how they operate. And this is just one organization. What's the point? The point is to ostracize these people and to make it clear to the country and try and sell the idea that everyone who's conservative, that it's an extremist ideology. That traditional values are an extremist ideology. which, by the way, is right out of Saul Alinsky's playbook for rules for radicals. Not a great read, but one that you should tackle, just so you can know the mind of the enemy, because Marxism is indeed the enemy. There is no doubt here. There are no Democrats and Republicans. There are Marxists and there are Americans. And the majority of the country sits in the American camp. But the problem is this minority, this small group of people, they own the media, they own Hollywood, they own they own the universities, they own professors like this. They have all that. So it appears the illusion gets created that they are out there in mass, but they are not. The fact that we even have to have a debate as to what a woman is tells you how effed up these people's minds are from this ideological subversion, because it's not even like they're trying to troll you. They believe this stuff. So what happens when they paint everybody as an extremist is that now that they have these minions out there, those minions will sell out their neighbors. And this is the real meat and potatoes that DHS would like to have happen, is to just have this network of little commies running around the country trying to sell each other out and sell out their neighbors and friends, even their friends. That's how lost mentally these people become. Here, listen to it.
The idea here is to kind of leverage. And if you've read any of the prosecutorial documents from January 6th, you'll learn that about 85%, that's a real number, of people being prosecuted were turned in by their immediate family or coworkers. Almost every affidavit starts out that way. It's amazing to read. So many people were turned in by someone they went to college with, someone they work with, someone they went to school with, bowling alley, stuff like that. And it tells you in the affidavit that's how they identified you.
So it tells you in the affidavits that's how they identified you. So according to DOD's own stats, from what the good doctor here is telling us, 85% of people that they've rounded up were turned in by citizens. If that doesn't sound Nazi to you, please explain what exactly is your definition of Nazi, because that's as Nazi as it freaking gets, dude. That's it. Nazi, communist, however you want to freaking lay it down. This is what they do. And you say, well, that's not really happening. That's not a real thing. Well, when we look back at January 6th, while Duke-de-Doo's like the good doctor here would like to have everybody believe that the people that were getting turned in by these brave citizens were all terrorists and extremists. Well, let's take a look at a couple of these terrorists.
He said, are you Maureen Bailey? And I said, yes. And he said, we're the FBI. All I kept saying was, are you kidding? Federal misdemeanor trespass charges. And that would include 1 year in jail. Federal prison. You are now on a list of suspected domestic terrorists.
2 74-year-old women, and we're,
Twin domestic terrorists.
Yes. And, I'm a grandmother.
And we know that a neighbor turned us in to the FBI.
You know that a neighbor told the FBI.
Yes, we know for a fact.
My friends that live in Pennsylvania told me that there was a billboard in Pennsylvania looking for people. It was a number to call.
On a highway?
Yes. I was driving to my parents' house in Florida, and I saw another one on the way. And it just gave me chills that, it was almost like we were being hunted down, like we were criminals or something.
At 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, I got a call from my agent. And he said, he calls me up and he says, well, did you go in the Capitol? I said, no. Why? He said, there's a casting director here that is spreading around a picture of you saying that Nick Searcy went into the Capitol. He's an insurrectionist. I said, who is?
So Nick Searcy, just to give you context, he's all bearded up here in the video that his stream was on was fuzzy, but he's the one who was in he did the documentary Capital Punishment. He did not go in the Capitol building. His footage was all from outside. They did use in the documentary other people's footage from inside, but he did not go into the Capitol building. But yet, lo and behold, who is it that tried to turn him in?
The casting director, and he told me, and it was an old friend of mine. It was somebody I knew for 30 years. So you have this whole sector of the community, and it's really large, that are perfectly willing to act like Soviet informants in the 30s, turning in their neighbors for saying something mean about Stalin.
And that's absolutely right. Okay, that's absolutely right. Is that these people are, and this was his friend of 30 years, but he's gone, right? He's programmed. Think of friends that you've had for 30 years over something so trivial as doing a documentary at the Capitol. Like you're now gonna turn him in for what? Like the guy doesn't even know what he's turning him in for. He just knows. Like the programming kicks in. If you've ever seen Treadstone, which is a spin-off series of the Bourne series, Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, etc. There's this little like musical tune that they play for these soldiers, that these operatives that are out there. When they hear this musical tune, it comes with a picture, and then that's the person they instantly stop their regular life and now have to go kill that person. This is kind of what it is. It's kind of the same thing. It's wild. So does the good doctor, Dr. Michael Lodenthal, does he think that, does he know that he's breaking the law? Does he know that what he's doing is criminal? And if so, does the FBI and the DHS know? Because when they watch this video, which he sent to them, you would think that would be the case. But here, let's hear him.
To your question about what can liberals do, and I feel like it's a trite and simple answer, but you can give money. That's always really appreciated. We have legal defense funds because we get in trouble. A lot of the things we're doing are illegal, right? What I'm telling you, a lot of it involves breaking the law. And this is what the FBI will say. I've had many conversations with the FBI about this, where I bring them in to speak to my students, and they're like, well, we can't do what you're doing because you're misrepresenting yourself. Now, again, I know the history of the FBI and it's workless, so I think that's kind of a ludicrous answer, but sure, fine.
I've had a lot of conversations with the FBI about this, and then tells right before he says, remember, you can donate money to our defense fund because what we do is illegal. But again, because he's programmed, it's perfectly rational for him to do something completely illegal to try and upend other innocent civilians' rights, because he doesn't see them as innocent civilians, because in his mind, they're all extremists. In his mind, they're all, but even if you actually are an extremist, if you don't commit being an extremist in and of itself is not a crime. It's important that people remember what the hell our Constitution is about and how this country operates. The reason we haven't fallen to Marxism yet is because nobody acknowledges hate speech except the indoctrinated. Why? Not because they believe whatever the heck the hate speech person is saying. It's because they understand civics. Because they understand the Constitution. That's why. Because they understand that hate speech or angry speech or speech that people don't like is the only speech that requires protection. The idea that somebody agrees with the speech because they're saying somebody's got a right to say it, that's it's a liberal way to think, to be like, I disagree with you completely, but I defend your right to say it. That's an old school liberal thing, which has now apparently become an alt-right conservative thing, because everything is alt-right. Everything. And the last piece of this guy's mass formation I'm going to leave you with was his absolute delusion that he can't see extremism on the left. He can't see it. Again, this goes back to the programming. He truly can't see it. In the world that he lives in, he can't see entire city blocks being taken over in Portland, people dying, being shot, buildings being burned, he doesn't see it. It happens, but it's like Yuri was saying, right? And this is why this shirt is my favorite, because it's just like Yuri is saying, once they're fully demoralized, there's no amount of information you can bring to them that will change their way of thinking. There's no amount of facts. There's no amount of paperwork, nothing. And those half-baked intellectuals from the 60s, as he calls them, at that point, by 1984, had already infiltrated all the positions of power in society. They owned Hollywood. They infiltrated politics. They infiltrated our universities. They were all over the place. So this guy is the product of like 2 generations later. This guy is a product of the madness that you see going on today. But listen to him try and acknowledge like how bad it is when people look at the left as being extreme.
And one of the ways people can help that is by standing up and speaking out for people when we're so regularly and routinely defamed. When the FBI calls anti-fascists domestic terrorists, when the FBI calls anti-fascists extremists, as they do in current literature, we are considered racially motivated violent extremists. That is absurd. That is an absurd statement. I can count on one hand the number of violent attacks coming from leftists in this manner.
Now, I don't know how many fingers this dude has on his hand. I'm guessing he should have somewhere around 30 or 40 fingers on that hand. I mean, I'm not 100%. I don't have to take a closer look at his hand, but I'm going to help him out. I'm going to help him out because I have 5 fingers on my hand, and I'm going to need both my hands, my feet, and probably someone else's hands and toes to finish the count. But I'm going to give at least 6 just to make the point that we're off of his hand easy.
People protesting the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. At 3 o'clock, a large gathering took place. Thousands of people at Westlake Park in Seattle. About 3:45, pandemonium broke out. The police cruiser set on fire. As many as 8 other police cars set fire, and then police moved in to try to disperse the crowd.
Are they peaceful?
I hope.
Oh my God!
This photograph was taken on the 29th of June, 2019 in downtown Portland. You probably heard the story. I was recording a protest turned riot by Antifa, as I had been doing for many years. And that day, in organized fashion, Antifa beat me severely. One other person is a man by the name of John Bloom. He was striked on the head with a baton by an Antifa militant in downtown Portland. In addition to John Bloom, there was Adam Kelly. He was hit on the head with an overhead strike by Antifa member Gage Halupowski, who was using a collapsible baton. Kelly needed 25 staples to close the gashes on his head. And here's the body of Aaron Danielson in downtown Portland. Last year, after months of rioting in downtown Portland, it escalated to murder.
Not really, it kind of scares me.
An Antifa member shot dead a Trump supporter, and in this photograph you can see him on his shorts. He's actually wearing a patch of the thin blue line, which is showing support for police.
And all of those examples were regular occurrences all throughout the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, these people had toured the country destroying one D, and it's still going on. It's still going on in the form of Soros DAs and whatnot. It's still going on. And the idea that this is, that the left, I can count on one. I mean, that's such a wild thing to say. I can count on one hand how many times this, the left has perpetrated this stuff. He believes this stuff, folks. He believes it. And our government is paying for it. And this is what there's only one way to fix this stuff, folks. I mean, yeah, we can fix it in the short term if we just, get a better president in, fire these people that are heading to DHS and whatever. But that's not going to kill the 6-headed snake that exists right now. You've got the CIA, DARPA, and NSA. You've got the FBI, all of these agencies, DHS, 5 agencies. They're doing the same friggin' job. 5 agencies, they all do the same job, and they have all been turned on the American people. Every one of them. You can throw ATF in there as well. All of them have turned on the American people. They have all been weaponized, and all of them really need to go. All of them. We can recreate one organization that can handle interstate commerce issues, right? White-collar crimes across state lines, those sort of settle interstate disputes, right? Maybe chip in if there's a fugitive crossing many states or something like that. Other than that, we don't really need them. Not domestically. We don't need them. Their focus needs to be outward. Period. Period. That's it. Their focus needs to be outward. And there's so much redundancy there. There's so much money to be saved by shutting these animals down. So much money to be saved by shutting these animals down. And that can be done even in this current convention that's being called. Now, I don't speak on behalf of Convention of States Action. I don't speak on behalf of anybody but me and the Patriot think tank. But the fact of the matter is, under the topics that are under this convention, all right, under those topics, government overreach is there. It's term limits for all federal officials, not just elected. So don't give me, oh, well, we have term limits, they're elections. That's not witty, it's old, and it's wrong. All right, the second one is fiscal restraints. All right, fiscal restraints, think balanced budget amendment. In the Constitution, a forced balanced budget amendment. Like put the Congress in direct violation of the Constitution if they fail to run a balanced budget in a given year and have penalties set forth thereof. And then maybe, God willing, an overturn of the 16th Amendment would be outstanding. But then there's government overreach. This is it's been talked about as addressing the government agencies with respect to regulatory agencies, but there's no reason. If someone wants to argue to me that the federal government is not overreached in its powers with the use of the way they've been using the FBI, NSA, CIA, etc., that argument is clear. The convention's going to have a lot to talk about. But the first thing that has to happen is you need to go sign the petition. That's what has to happen. And you can do that from our website, www.thepatriotthinktank.com/COS. Right on the bottom of the screen. You go to that website, you'll see a link to sign the petition. There's also links there for COS University to learn more and get yourself educated on the topic. And while you're signing the petition, click the volunteer button. All right. The volunteering is local. So you got to learn more about the movement and how it works, really how your government works. But all the power sits with the state legislatures. So the person that reaches out to you when you say, I want to volunteer, that person's going to be local to you. They're going to be in like driving distance to you from your district. All right. It'll be a district captain from your district who will reach out to you and get you up to speed on where to find materials to learn more, what you can do, what your particular district needs to get that particular representative motivated, to get that state legislature motivated so that they can pass their petition and get this through and become state number 20, 21, 22, 23, etc. We need 34 in total, all right? And it's 38 to ratify. But this is how it has to happen. And you just saw why. Because people like the good old Dr. Lodenthal, he's not alone, folks. He's one example that I pointed out in this video. There are some level of minions of him, certainly in our university system. It's time we get them out. We'll talk more about this on Wednesday Night Live, every Wednesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation then. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this, any opinions or anything you want to opine. Also, let me know where it is that you're watching from. I love to hear all the places around the country and the world that our viewers come from. But until next time, don't forget to subscribe on Rumble. I'm out.